Okay, so hello everyone. Today our topic will be historical background of the Indian polity. This will be a part two of our series, and let's get started. In earlier video, we have seen the company rule and all the like acts and regulating acts and all the chartered acts and everything. So today we will be studying the Crown's rule. Earlier it was company's rule, so now it will be a Crown rule, and we'll study the Government of India Act, the Indian Council Acts, and till India gained its independence in 1947. Okay, so let's see the Crown's rule. The Crown's rule lasted from 1858 to 1947. So the first act was Government of India Act. So let's see this. This significant act was enacted in the wake of the revolt of 1857, also known as the First War of Independence or the Sepoy Mutiny. The act known as the Act for the Good Government of India abolished the East India Company and transferred the powers of government, territories, and revenues to the British Crown. So what happened was, like, the company was ruling, and what happened was, like, the company was not able to run, the functions and everything, like the administration, legislation, and everything. And then the revolt of 1857 took place, and then like everything got ahead of their hands. So now what happened was the government of Britain took over. Okay, so now they handled everything, like the government of India and everything, like that, territories and revenues and everything. Okay, so the features of this act are as follows. It provided that India henceforth was to be governed by and in the name of Her Majesty. It changed the destination of the Governor General of India to the Viceroy of India. So what happened was the Governor General of India, which were earlier Governor General of Bengal, then it was changed to Governor General of India, and now in from the Government of India Act of 1858, it was changed to Viceroy of India. Okay. So the Viceroy was the direct representative of the British Crown in India. Lord Canning thus became the first Viceroy of India. Okay, Lord Canning was the first Viceroy. So it ended the system of double government by abolishing the Board of Control and Court of Directors. So these two, that the BOC and COD, both were ended or abolished, and it created a new office, Secretary of State of India, and vested with complete authority and control over administration. The Secretary of State was a member of the British Cabinet and was responsible ultimately to the British government or British Parliament. So what happened was there was a Secretary of State of India was vested, and control power was with this person. So he was the member of the British cabinet, and he was the Secretary of State, was responsible for everything, like to the British Parliament, whatever was happening in India. So Secretary of State is responsible to tell it to the British Parliament. Okay, and it established a 15-member Council of India to assist the Secretary of State for India. The council was an advisory body. The Secretary of State was made the chairman of the council. So the Secretary of State was made the chairman, and there was a 15-member council to assist him. Okay. It constituted the Secretary of State and Council as a body corporate capable of suing and being sued in India and in England. So this person was Secretary in State, it was a corporate body, and he can sue anybody, and he can be sued by the British government in India and in England as well. Okay, so the Act of 1858 was, however, largely confined to the improvement of the administrative machinery by which the Indian government was to be supervised and controlled in England. It did not alter in any substantial way the system of government that prevailed in India. So what happened was, like, after the act or revolt of 1857, the British government took over, and all the administration and everything was under the British control. And that's why the England controlled all the administration, legislation, execution, everything of the India. And like the rest other things and regulations and act were prevailed in India. It didn't had any a problem with it. Then comes the Indian Councils Act of 1861. After the Great Revolt of 1857, the British government felt the necessity of seeking cooperations of the Indians in the administration of their country. So what happened was, after this revolt, like there was a huge revolt, and a lot of people took part in this so that they can have independence. So now the British, felt the necessity that we should give cooperation or participation to the Indians as well, so that they can run their own country. And in pursuance of this policy of association, three acts were enacted by the British Parliament, which were 1861, 1892, and 1909. The Indian Council Act of 1861 is an important landmark in the constitutional and political history of India. So this act is very important. And features of the saga, it made a beginning or the representative institutions by associating Indians with the lawmaking process. So by this act, Indians were made, very necessary people, so that they can take part in their own decision making and law making things and everything. So this act gave them power to do so. It thus provided that the viceroy should nominate some Indians as non-official members of this expanded council. And in 1862, Lord Canning, the then viceroy, nominated three Indians to his legislative council, who were Raja of Banaras, the Maharaja of Patiala, and Sir Dinkar Rao. So these three were elected as non-official Indian. Like these three Indians were elected as non-official members of the expanded council. It initiated the process of decentralization by restoring the legislative powers to the Bombay and Madras presidencies. So earlier what happened was, like, the powers, we can say, of the governors of Bombay and Madras were taken, and it was they were made subordinates to the Governor General of Bengal. So now their legislative powers were restored, and decentralization's process was initiated. It thus reversed the centralization tendency that started from the Regulating Act of 1773, which we already studied in our last video, and reached its climax under the Charter Act of 1833. This policy of legislation devolution resulted in the grant of almost complete internal autonomy to the provinces in 1937. So now what happened was, these things came back to a situation of before 1773, when all the three presidencies have the autonomy to be run everything on their own, and they had power. So now now in 1833, and turn in 1937. Okay, so till 1937 they can have their internal autonomy. So whatever is happening in the provinces, they have all the autonomy to make regulations and rules and everything, like laws and everything. It also provided for the establishment of new legislative councils for Bengal, northwestern provinces, and Punjab, which were established in 1862, 1886, and 1897 respectively. Okay, it empowered the viceroy to make rules and order for the most convenient transactions of business in the council. It also gave a recognition to the portfolio system introduced by Lord Canning in 1859. Under this, a member of the viceroy's council was made in charge of one or more departments of the government and was authorized to issue final orders on behalf of the council on matters of its department. So now, people's, or the peoples in his council were given had a certain amount of authority, so they can make and they can issue orders on behalf of the council. Okay, it powered the Viceroy to issue ordinances without the concurrence of the Legislative Council during an emergency. The life of such an ordinance was 6 months. So this is very important. This is also, like residing with our president as well to issue ordinances. And this is which article? Do let me know in the comment section. Okay. So this is your homework as well. So let's see what's next. Okay, so the next is Indian Councils Act of 1892. Earlier it was 1861. Okay, so now this the features of this act is it increased the number of additional non-official members in the central and provisional legislature councils but maintained the official majority in them. So now like they increased the number but it was non-official and everything. It increased the functions of legislative council and gave them the power of discussing the budget and addressing questions to the executive. The system of budget was introduced in British India in 1860. So now also like yesterday our financial budget came, our union budget came. So this system was introduced by the British in India and in 1860. It provided for the nomination of some non-official members of the Central Legislative Council by the Viceroy on the recommendation of the provincial legislative councils and the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so now like people can like provisional legislative councils, like people like the viceroy can like recommend people in these chambers and etc. That of the provisional legislative councils by the governors on the recommendations of the district boards, municipalities, universities, trade associations, zamindars and chambers and etc. Okay, so the act made a limited and indirect provision for the use of election in filling up some of the non-official seats, both in the central and provincial legislative councils. The word election was, however, not used in this act. The process was described as nomination made on the recommendation of certain bodies. So now also we see, right, the Chief Justice of India or the Vice President or, these people are made on the, like recommendation of our president. So this process was started from here. Okay. Now next, and I think this is going to be a long video, so I'll cover the Indian Councils Act, that is a modeling into reforms and other things in our next video. So till here, thank you so much for joining us, and do like, share and subscribe to our channel, and I'll make the rest video in a certain in a different video in part 3. So thank you so much for watching.